Welcome. Excited for everybody to be here. It's nice to see some new faces on the call and a broad grouping of people who are represented. Just to rehash a little bit on what Chris mentioned as far as our topic for today. While we are talking about automation this month, what we're going to do today is not going to be completely focused on automation, but more on preparation for automation and thinking about the different things that can be automated. So we're not going to be necessarily getting into the technical aspects of doing the automation, but today's call, we're going to be kind of talking about things that can be automated. And the goal today that I have for you is that when you leave this call, that you are going to have some practical ideas on things that you can take off of your plate and not have to physically do every day or whatever, or however often you need to do things, and actually have a starting point of kind of a parking lot of ideas, if you will, places that you can bring automation into your company that will save you little bits of time. Because I don't know if you guys have heard this statistic. I don't know the exact number, but when we context switch and we change from one thing to another, we switch from project to project. Every time we do that, we lose momentum. And oftentimes that can take you up to 5 or 10 minutes to get back up to speed and actually be operating at full capacity. And when you do that 10 times a day, that's almost an hour of lost time, right? So the more we can eliminate context switching, the better. And creating some of these simple automations that fix little things for you so you don't have to spend the time doing them is one more way to keep you from context switching. Anyway, that's the subject matter for today. And I'm hoping what we can do today is have an open forum and everybody jump in and participate and share your ideas. We'll be trying to leverage the chat a little bit today. But let's start out with first of all, the template there that Chris shared. Please follow the link and snag a copy of this document and just take notes for yourself. This is yours to keep. It's not ours. We're not looking at it. It's totally your list. But feel free to share it with us if you want to share ideas in the future. But yeah, let's get started. I'm going to kick things off with an example of a simple automation that I was developing with a client today. One of my clients, Ahmad, who's not on these calls yet, we're trying to get him here. Ahmad is working on some screening processes, and he had a very simple ask. During his screening process, once a lease has been approved, or rather an applicant has been approved, he needs to send out a notification that says, "Hey, you've been approved. Please sign the lease, and here is your time limit." And the time limit is to be set for 12 p.m. the next day. Now, it's a small thing for us to go in and have to select the value of the date and the time the next day, right? But that's something that we can very easily do with an automation. Every time that process begins, we can just have it update to pick that specific time, and then that's incorporated, and that's one less thing to think about. In fact, we can even eliminate that from the process as far as something that needs to be visible, and instead just make it something that happens completely in the background, and it only matters when we send out that message to the applicant. So that's an example of maybe a simple automation that's a small time saver, but one less thing to do. Now, there's much bigger and sexier automations that we can talk about, like onboarding forms and lease automations, things like this, that can also be time saving, but they're usually a little bit harder to pull off, right? Because there's more pieces that are involved. There's more things that we need to do. But Mike, I want to tag you in, Mike Giraldo here, and not Mike Goldstein, although Mike, we'd love to hear from you too. But Mike Giraldo, I'd be curious if there's anything that you can add here in terms of simple automations, ways that we can add quick and easy value and bring in simple automations that people can use.
Yeah. The big one is I think everybody in any business, they usually like to keep stuff organized in the cloud. So whether that be Google Drive, that be Team Drives, basically at some point in the business, most people want to store information into a folder. And it's either when we're getting a new client or when we want to copy over contract agreements or any of that. Now that stuff feels small, but I usually see it's a big time sink that people go unnoticed because it's such an easy thing to do that it usually goes unnoticed into, can I get something automated to do it? Because little things can slip by you, like the naming convention that you have for your folders. Do you always put first and last name of your client? Do you do a little dash and then the property information or the property address? And then are you doing that consistently? Do you have this very specific way of doing it? And all that, while people don't think about it, is a lot of brain power. And you miss a letter or you miss a way it's done, and then you find out that down the line you need to search for this folder and you don't remember how it was named, or you don't remember your naming convention, or you change your naming convention from time to time, and these little grains of rice start adding up, and all of a sudden you just have a an inconsistent storage. So I usually find that everybody has a folder, everybody uses Google Drive, everybody uses some form of drive, and being able to get that out of the way with a quick checkbox just helps stuff down the line because there's just so much you can do once you start getting into it. I can make sure it's stored. That folder link is stored somewhere very specific when I need it. And then that means that's an extra step I've been doing manually. I create the folder manually. Now I have to copy the link manually, and then I have to go put it somewhere else, maybe a spreadsheet I have, or maybe Lead Simple in my property card or my owner contact card. And then those are extra little steps that can start adding up. And every time I'm getting a new client, for example.
Yeah.
So if I can remove that, then I know it's happening consistently. I know it's happening the right way consistently. And those are 5, 10, 15 extra minutes. And the more I run into that, and I'm talking from experience here at Black Sheep, the more I run into that, the more I'm like, wait, we also add this to another table. Wait, we also add this to our timesheets. Wait, we also add this to X and Y and Z. And all of a sudden, I'm like, wait, when we onboard a new client, it's like a 35 to 40-minute process if I'm doing this manually.
Yeah,
And yeah,
and investing some time up front can definitely yield massive results in the long run. And for what it's worth, building automations around onboarding, while I would definitely consider them very high value automations, can also be complex, right? So they can lead down a path that's a little bit more challenging. But maybe some other automations that are relatively simple. I want to just share our internal Zapier account here for a second so you guys can see a little bit of what we do. And I want to highlight a couple of really simple automations that we have. This is one that Caitlin from our team came up with recently, where we use Airtable to track all of the different tasks that we have. And when a new Airtable record is created, then it starts playing a song in Spotify. And it's a goofy automation, but it's a little thing that makes Caitlin laugh. It's playing the song Chain Gang, which is, we think that's hilarious, right? Dumb joke, but that's a simple automation that makes life a little bit better. Another example of a simple automation here would be when something happens in Lead Simple, we want to push an update into Slack, right? In this case, I can't remember the specifics of this one, but there's a lot of application here where you can use Slack or you could send an email or any other kind of notification that's going out to your team. And by something happening in Lead Simple, or you receive an email or something like that, just your trigger, then you can send out a notification and advise your team this thing is now complete or this thing is now true. This tenant is moved in, this owner is onboarded, let's celebrate. Or, hey, we got to look out, we've got this problem that's inbound, right? We got an emergency notification from a tenant. We received a maintenance request that has sirens in it. Big problems, right? So you can use these simple notifications again to highlight some of the simple to-dos that are ongoing. Now, one of the other things that we all have in our businesses is recurring tasks, right? Everybody has things that either happen on a daily basis, weekly basis, monthly basis, annually. All these things can be repetitive. And there's also lots of things that happen on a regular basis just throughout the business, like we've talked about onboarding, new sales, applications coming in, etc. So I'd love for you guys to take a minute and turn to your worksheets if you could, and start working on it if you haven't already. Start working on jotting down some ideas around some of the things that take up your time on a day-to-day basis. And I think we're gonna make this super awkward and be totally quiet for 5 minutes so that we're all forced to actually write things down. I'm gonna shut up, which is gonna be really hard. And don't jump in with your mics, but let's take a couple of quick minutes. We'll go till the 19 minutes after the hour for a second here. And let's everybody work on writing down some of the quick things that you could automate or things that you think you could automate. If you're not sure about it, that's okay. Write down the ideas and we'll jump in and discuss here in a minute. So grab a copy of that document that Chris has shared, and I'm going to turn off my mic so I stop talking.
We have to work on the document itself, or we can just think about it.
Oh, I would say make a copy of that document and write stuff down. Let's start capturing those ideas and get them out of your head and on a paper. No idea is a bad idea. Let's get it all down on paper. And I know it's a little bit different than we usually do, guys, but I think it'll be a good exercise. All right, time starts now. And BSG team, you got to do this too. Okay. Whew, that was killer. It's hard to stay quiet for 5 minutes, guys. All right. Let's see. Yes, I looked at my email. I'm not gonna lie, but only for half a second. So it's okay. No judgment. All right. So again, the goal of the exercise here is to force ourselves to generate some ideas, whether they're good or bad. That's totally okay. Doesn't really matter about the quality of the idea, but actually forcing ourselves to jot some ideas down. So I'm curious. Let's hear some of your ideas. What are some of the things that you wish you could automate? Some things that would make your life a little bit better. Anybody feel free to hop in here. Go
I
for it,
can do
Mike.
it. Oh, Mike, go ahead.
Get multiple spreadsheets updated with addresses and unit numbers.
Okay. What would that accomplish for you? What would be the outcome of that?
It would have to be associated with a notification, so my support team could know, hey, we got a the trigger would be a signed property management agreement, and then it would go into, we have to track a bunch of dates, air filter sizes.
Sure.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I like it. No, yeah, I think that sounds like something that's definitely achievable. It's just a matter of figuring out where the information comes from and exactly where you want it to go.
Yeah, we're just setting this up now, and I don't want to derail the conversation, but we were in between just a Google Sheet or Airtable, but that's a conversation for another day, I'm sure.
Yeah, I like Airtable for what it's worth. Google Sheets are also cool though. So there's more functionality in Airtable. Marco, you were going to say something?
Yeah, just let me turn my camera on. Sorry, not my personally, our biggest issue is the onboarding, in a sense that from my perspective and from my analysis that I did so far, most of our owners in the last month and a half, and we onboarded about, I don't know, 28 units, right? In the last month and a half, they're elderly, right? So I'm trying to figure out, I had a struggle collecting the information, like from the intake packet, or either it's incorrect, right? Or they mark both fields, yes and no. So I'm trying to figure out like how to automate that process. So because I have this long task in Elite Simple, which covers everything that intake packet covers for the property, right? Whether there is a pool or not, if there is a pool, who's paying for the services, right? If there is a gardener, who's paying for the services, who's paying for the taxes, who's paying for the mortgage, if there is a mortgage, and so on, right? So many of those owners that I encountered in the last month were not tech savvy, so they just print the document, send it to us, or even if they fill out the form, they're marking different areas over there, and it's messing up my process. So that's my major concern right now and major issue. How can I maybe streamline this? Should we just add yes or no question? Is there a pool? And then sub questions so they can answer it. But again, like I had a owner that we onboarded previous week, and she marked taxes like should we pay or owner takes care of the tax or their impound. She marked all three. So I need to get in touch with that owner to clarify and so on.
Marco, have you considered maybe in a targeted way when you onboard those new owners that you have a conversation with them rather than having them fill out the form?
Usually it's the PTM first that makes the first contact, see the property, meet with the owner, and then we send it the PMA and everything else to fill out. Only after that, I jump in to make sure that we have all the information, to make sure that
I guess what I'm getting at here is I wonder if the time savings of you having, if you or someone else, whoever is doing this, of reaching out to this person up front and getting all the information in a format that is consistent, the way that you want it to be, if that time savings would be worth it for the back end. Right now, you're having to navigate through every little bit of this to figure out what's what and having to revisit things and probably having to call people back and be like, hey, what did you actually want here?
I guess that would be a good suggestion, like for the PTM to ask for the options. Would you like it to go electronically or to fill out the form, or do you want me to print it out? And depending on how tech savvy they are. But that's my problem right now, because when the information is parsed, like it's either missing or I still have to compare.
If your information is parsing poorly, which in this case is coming from your input, right? You have to control your input more. which I think a good solution here would be to have those conversations, right? You can make that judgment call. Do we think this person is going to be able to fill out the form the way that we need them to? And if not, we have an option that says, hey, we're going to call you and go through this form together and make it a value add versus it's not a detraction from that person. It's, hey, here's another way that we're going to serve you and take care of you.
But thanks for the suggestion.
sure.
Maybe that's something that I should
Yeah.
bring up to the BDM. So
Anybody else have some ideas on things that you'd automate if you could?
When you're talking about optimization, you're talking about just within the Lit Simple process, or it could be.
No, actually, I'll give you an example. One of the things that I wrote down that I need to figure out a way to do is getting all of the. I haven't sat down and figured out a way to do that yet, but that would be such a time savings for me because
You
every month
uh,
I got to go
you
through.
fr-
You
you froze at that like
lost
key
it.
piece
Yeah,
of like
I-
what it was. We'll never know.
Okay, let me start over. So one of the things I'd love to automate is getting all of the receipts that come into my inbox sent to my bookkeeper, right? Because every month I have to spend an hour or two going through and finding all the different receipts and making sure that the bookkeeper's got all the stuff and everything gets managed on the financial side of the business. And I would, if I could not spend that time doing that, would be really nice. So that's a problem I'd like to solve. So it doesn't
Froze again.
be anything. Oh, man, froze again. Gosh dang it. Sorry, guys. But just to answer your question, Francisco, it wouldn't have to be in Lead Simple. It could be anywhere.
Okay. Yeah, I would like to automate, maybe at the beginning of the month, I start the lease renewal process for every PM and I assign the process to them. So it would be nice to have like you said, the example that you show there, to have a trigger, a message whenever I start the lease renewal process to notify the PMs in Slack. That would be nice.
Yeah, that's definitely achievable.
Just to have a template. Hey, I just started the lease renewal process and I just made you the owner just for you to be aware.
Yeah. And you can do that, I think, relatively easily without even having IDs. You could just search to find the person with the right name and have notify the right person just using the Slack application, I think. Yeah, definitely achievable. Anybody else? Some ideas? Betty?
If PMAs, sorry,
Oh, no, I'll read.
I've-
No worries, Mike. Let's hear one from Betty, if that's okay.
When we start a new property, we send the owner a Google form.
Uh-huh.
They fill out everything that they know. So then it goes into that big spreadsheet that Google has. And then we have a virtual assistant that takes all that information and puts it into Lead Simple. But then they also have to put it into Appfolio. And it would be nice. I think there's some things that automatically get pulled from Appfolio into Lead Simple, but I don't know what those are. I don't know how to set up those, what do you call those?
The different fields.
The fields.
Uh-huh.
And so it would be nice if it just kind of did all that.
Yeah. The fields from that spreadsheet that comes from your Google form can definitely be automated to go into Lead Simple. Unfortunately, it can't be automated to go into Appfolio, at least not yet. But you could save yourself half of that step by sending all of the information that you wanted into Lead Simple, and that could be done using Zapier. And then you can limit the information that you put into Appfolio to the information that, like you mentioned, you actually need. And those fields, for context, Betty, I can tell you what they are. They would be your property address and name, your unit address and name, any existing tenant information, any owner information. And then as far as the specific unit fields that you're going to see there, you'll have the unit start and end date. You'll have any current balance, the current rent, and Mike, help me out. Is there anything I'm missing there?
Depending on the accounting software, it could give you future move-in dates or future move-out dates if you get notices.
Betty, you do use Appfolio, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So it might be that you would need that information, but I think for onboarding, those dates wouldn't really apply as much. So you'd really just use that basic information, and then everything else that's in the form that's related to the property, I would just send those things into Lead Simple because that's where they're actually going to be more actionable, right? Whether it's a pet-friendly property or not, I'd put that in Lead Simple because that's where we're going to do some of our screening and reviewing of, does this property qualify for this tenant? or is this property built before 1978? Lead Simple is where I would run my process to make sure that I send the right notifications around lead that could be in the property and lease changes that would be accommodated because of that. Yeah. Definitely some options there. Mike, you want to jump back in, sir?
Yeah, I was just saying to automate filling out the PMA, filling out the leases, and just helping with some. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, and I just said huge.
Oh, yeah. And tracking some of the KPIs. So we just launched a scorecard. How many listings went live last week? I wish there was a way to keep track of that. How many listing appointments for PM, for property management contracts that I go on? Things like that.
Yeah. You can definitely create, I would say, ugly reports with some of the information from Lead Simple, just using Zapier to pull numbers and create a spreadsheet or an Airtable that kind of keeps account for you and tracks how many listings are on at any given time. The challenge with doing that kind of data, Mike, is that you're looking at data that is going to fluctuate. And so you need a live feed. And that's where having API access to Lead Simple is really helpful, which is not something that any of us really have except through Zapier. One of the things I would encourage you to check out if you have a chance, I think I may have told you about this before, but I'll just mention it anyway, the Siggy dashboard, which is something the folks at Profit Coach put together, and that allows you to customize data points. They do have an API access to Lead Simple, and so they can create dashboards that track that information for you. I will say it is a premium product. It's not cheap. So if we're just getting started, it may not be the best solution, but it still can be a helpful way to make some of that data more visible and have live information. Yeah. And if you go to them, tell them that we sent you.
For your lease generation automations, we've done a few of those for a couple of clients. And so I've got some verifiable data on that one. That's always been a really big time saver for those who implement that. I have a client that it used to take them about an hour to generate their lease for approved applicants, just because of how extensive leases can sometimes be, depending on where you live. You either have a 2-3 page lease or a 20-page lease with a whole bunch of different little subsections. And when we did the automation, it's a bear to build for sure. But once it's built and once it's been refined and tweaked a bit, she reported that she's able to do 3 applications in the time it took her to do, in the time it used to take her to do 1. And this was at the beginning phases of it. So when you have to pull in your property information for the first time, like included utilities and amenities, and whether it's an HOA or not, like the questions that you would have to ask in Lead Simple, this is where your automation would take place for the first time around. But we're hoping, and because it's still fairly new for this particular client, that the next time they have to lease this property out, most of that she's already filled it out for the first time. She knows who the utility company is for that property. She knows what amenities are included, and those will likely not change. So the next time she's got to build a lease, at least like 60 to 70% of what needs to be filled out that first time doesn't need to be filled out again. So we're hoping it's going to go up from 3 to maybe 5 applications in an hour.
Yeah, moving a lot faster. And that's definitely a big time saver, but again, a big investment of time to build. So not necessarily an easy one, but certainly a high value one. Susan, anything for you that comes to mind as far as automations that you like, problems you'd like to solve and not have to deal with anymore?
Yeah, a bunch.
Oh.
Our biggest one, and I know we're going to work on it, is so for now, our owner onboarding process is we get the phone call. I want my team to be able to send out that initial email that says, hey, whatever, if you needed to call with Susan, but then we send out a sample PMA that comes in, we get it signed. We have a JOT form that we're manually sending back out to get all that other information. I know there's a way to automate that, so I'm not having to monitor it every second. And also when that PMA comes in, I don't want to be the one to enter it. So I want it to go to somebody else on my team to enter everything into AppFolio where it needs to be.
Yeah.
And it's only a problem because I had 6 of those calls yesterday. So it took my whole day.
Yeah, like we were talking about earlier in the call, that context switching of having to go from one thing to the next thing to the next thing. And sometimes the things are the same, but sometimes they're completely different, right? You're going to go have your call, and then you have to go back and deal with a new lease, and then you have to go back and deal with a work order, and then maybe you come back to more of those calls. And every time you context switch, it's just the information gets lost.
Yeah.
Unless you have a really thorough plan. And even then, it's still challenging. So the more we can automate that, the less you have to context switch.
I'd also say Michael totally freaked me out. I got on a little late, but the whole naming convention of files, we battle with that all the time. It's okay, we start one consistently, and then next thing you know, we've forgotten how we're doing it. So we start it again in another way. So getting those all streamlined is super priority.
Yeah, that's a really good one to talk about here. And again, a high value automation, definitely a high input automation. And I think the thing to keep in mind, as Mike mentioned, is the value is in the consistency. And the computer only knows to do what we tell it, right? Again, I'm exposing my beliefs about AI here because personally, I don't think we ever have to be afraid of AI. That's just me. Because computers only do what we tell them, what they're programmed to do. And yes, technically one can or cause a computer to do bad things, right? We can make it plan to do bad things, but it's still a controllable device. Anyway, too philosophical for this call. In any case, when we can approach this in a predictable and consistent way, then you have that better outcome, Susan. And then there's so many other things that can rely on that and work on that data. Now, obviously, the more complex you make your automations, the easier they are to break. But if you at least simplify things in that you make a central data point and you have one consistent way of naming things, then that's definitely an opportunity for a lot of automations. So
I think one big one internally here, Ben, that I'm working on this week is that I put out on my notes is our level 10 documents. We have our weekly level 10 calls for our different departments here. I don't know who here's familiar with EOS, but generally have a document, go through a flow of our company calls and just figure out where we're on track and off track and all the stuff in between of just keeping the company running and finding ways to improve it. That creating that document, making the copy of the last week's document and updating it. It's a very small, annoying nuisance thing that I have to do 5-10 minutes before the call actually takes place because I forget because there's a bunch of other things I have to do. So sometimes forgetfulness is also a key ingredient into let me have a computer, let me figure out a way if a computer can do this. So I don't even have to remember to forget. And so that's something I'm working on this week is having that document populate every Monday morning for every department. So I don't even have to remember. So when we get on our call, Ben can ask me, do we have our document? I'm like, yeah, we do. It's in that folder that it will always populate in and you can always find it. So those little wins are quick automations that also just like, I always look for what do I never want to do again? How can I be the laziest possible and still be effective? That is my question every time I want to automate something.
Yeah. And on the tail end of that automation, Mike can even throw a Slack notification. So it pops in the Slack channel and tags everybody and says, hey, here's the document for the call today. And so there's no excuse for me to be like, hey, where's that document? Because it's already there. But yeah, lots of simple automations. And there's so much that you can do outside of Lead Simple. Obviously, Lead Simple is the central hub of our operating systems for most of us. But so many different things that you can do connected to or completely outside of. Lead Simple can be the trigger or completely different things can be the trigger. So anyway, yeah. All right, guys, I think we'll bring things to a close here. I know this is a little bit of a different call type today, but I hope it was thought provoking and that you've got some good ideas to walk away with. If you have other ideas, I'd love to hear about them. Feel free to drop them in the Facebook group and we can discuss the practicalities of how to make them happen. If you want some ideas on what are the steps that would be needed, what are the things that have to be true for this to work. And we love to contribute to that and help you guys make those automations reality and help you start saving some time. Yeah, we'll go ahead and wrap things up there.